Hello guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. This is Techno Kenya. So today we are going to get started with Compose. So in this video I'm going to take you through the basics of Compose. So we're going to look at what is Compose. We're also going to understand Compose functions. So let's get started. So first I'll create a new screen. I'll make it an empty activity. And I'll name it just as that main activity. So by default this is the main activity, which usually comes with XML, but this is now changing because in future most of the views we can create with Compose. So to create a Compose screen, you need to just create a class, unlike the previous ways where we used to create a screen with XML. So let me create now a Compose screen. So you just create a class. So Compose is a declarative toolkit, so you just define your layout, then the rest the compiler takes care of. So let's create a screen, name it our first Compose screen. So if you have interacted with Java, the syntax is almost similar. So in Compose we use Kotlin. It's the default language for creating Compose functions. So in this file that we have created our first Compose screen. So we can define our activity just the same way as it is defined here. So but in this case we shall use now Compose functions to create our layout. So in this previous screen we see that we can define anything. So anything that we need, we can define that within that class file. So if we go to our first Compose screen, so we can make our class a composable class. So first we can remove that, and to write Compose functions you start with @composable. So that imports this Compose library dependence. Then we define functions just the normal way in Kotlin. So function my first composable screen, then we can add whatever we need in our composable function. So another thing you need to know is that composable functions can only be called from other composable functions. So I want to create another composable functions. So at composable, my first composable screen preview. Now, as I said, that compose is declarative, so you declare your layouts, then the compiler renders it. So when you come to the editor, you can see there is the code, there is the split, and there is the design. So if we want to see what is inside, we can define our screen inside here. We can define our screen, then we can render it here. So when we render it, we have to call whatever we have defined here to the functions we need to render, so, or to preview. So if I come here and to split, it says a successful build is needed before this preview can be completed. So I can build. So for each of these, you must build your project so that the composable functions are compiled each time. So the way Compose works is that for each change you make, the changes, the rest of whatever you have done is updated on a bit by bit. So it doesn't like it does an incremental builds. So we have this class which has errors, so we can, for now, we can comment this class that we had created. So for Compose to work, to build successfully, your project must not have any errors. So we can go back to our first composable screen, then we can build. So when this builds, is that it will have a preview, so it will split between the code and the screen that we shall be creating. So if we wanted to see just the design, we would just come and click the design alone. So now the build has finished, but we are not yet there yet, because we must tell Compose that we want to preview. So in this function, we have to tell Compose that preview composable. So we must add preview at preview annotation, so that Compose now can render. See, it has rendered, it's just a black screen. So now to render the screen that we want, we must call it. As I said, composable functions can only be called from other composable functions or methods that facilitate calling composable functions. So, and composable functions are annotated with at composable. So now let's now call this our first screen, because we are going to define our first screen here. So let's call it here, so that whatever changes we make here in my first composable screen, we can see it, because it will be rendered here and it will be displayed on this design pane. So let's come and call my first composable screen. See, we have two methods, so each compose function that you define is available globally. So wherever you are, even if you create another composable class, you can still access it from that class. So in this case, every function in Compose is usually like a compose kind of class. So here we can see my first composable screen and my first composable screen preview. So because we want to call the first one, let's pick the first one, because we want whatever we write here, whatever we define here, we want it to be called it in this preview function. So another thing is that all compose functions must start with capital letters. So unlike other functions which just start with small letters, so it's well that all our compose functions start with capitals, because they act as classes. So let's change this to capitals. Then this method, this function, we have to define it here with a capital. Now let's start by creating our screen. So in this screen I want us to have two things. So in Compose we have layouts and we have the elements that we can place inside those layouts. So there is no a specific defined layouts, but what we do is that we use other layout builders or components that can help us build a layout. Then we come up with a custom layout. So one of the things that we can have to define our layouts is a column. So I want us to define a column. So now in Composable classes, so there is a class that is already defined in the Compose library known as column. So a column will arrange all its children in a vertical order. So if we have something, it will be as first thing, you'll have the first thing here, then the second, like that. So whatever you define here will be arranged in that order, where the first will come, then the second will come, but in a vertical order. So let's start by changing this screen from black to white. So because this is the overall parent for this, we want to have the column to be the overall parent. So remember, as I say, this is a composable function which also acts as a class. So just it's defined somewhere, so it's a function on itself. So we can come, and it's also a class, so we can come and add those the brackets. Now if you hover over this bracket, when you place this cursor over this bracket, you see there are various things. There is the modifier, there is the vertical arrangement, there is the horizontal arrangement, and there is the content. Now the content of this column will be inside here, inside these two brackets. That's where the content will be. Now to customize whatever is inside this composable known as column, we have to specify those fields or those properties inside this parentheses. So the parentheses, we can pass the modifier, the vertical arrangement, and other things. So let's start by changing the color of the entire of this column. So to change this color, we will need something, a property known as the modifier. And the way we define parameters or the values passed in these parentheses is that it's already defined, so we call it, so we say modifier. So modifier will help us modify the characteristic of this composable. So modifier makes changes, programmatic changes to this column. So we have modifier equals to, then we can now call the modifier class. So the modifier dot we want to have a background color of white, so let's have a background color of white. So dot background, then you see it has, this dot has called another function within this composable known as column. So there is an already done definition of background. So if we hover over the background, there are two things we can set. We can set the color, and we can also set the shape. And the color is the color to paint background with, and the shape is the desired shape of the background. So for now we shall be dealing with color. So we can come here and enter. Now when we enter, we can now come and define color is equals to, then we call the colors a package. So colors, the color dot white. Okay, so immediately you notice that it starts rendering over here. So it will start the render process. Then another thing we need to define is that we need to tell Compose how much this column will take, the amount of size. So we want it to be the parent, so we need it to occupy the entire space of the screen. So we can chain various, let me put it this way so that it can be a bit so we can chain various things. So the modifier helps us modify the column. So we can come and chain another thing. So we could come and say dot fill max size, so it will fill the entire size. So now you see it has filled the entire screen, and it has applied the first property, the dot background property, which we have specified to be white. So I like putting these chained functions that way. So now this dot fill max size has been called after we have applied. Now the order in which we call these functions matters. So if we called the fill max size, they matter. So assuming you called something to change the space, and another to change the colors, to first change the space before changing the colors. If you call one to change the color before changing the space, it will change the color, then apply the space. So in this case, we have used this column, which is composable, to define a white background. Now within this column, whatever is inside here is the content. Whatever is inside these two is the content, but whatever is within the parentheses is the properties of that composable. In other words, let me do this so that it can be a bit clear what I mean. So these are just parameters passed to the composable function. So you see, if I was to expand this, let me minimize this. So this is column, and it ends here. So you see, these are the properties. So we have defined the properties, and we have modified this column using the modifier class. which can have various things. So the modifier helps us modify properties of the column. Now this, whatever now we add here will be the contents of the column. So one of the common element we'll work with is a text. So let me add a text. So in Compose, when you type the class of that compose element you want, it will appear. So you have this text and there's this other one. So let's start with the first one. So the first one is a composable, and this the definition in the Compose library. So function text. So I said these are functions on themselves, and they also act as compose classes. You can consider them as compose classes, but by default they are composable function because they are annotated with that composable. Now we can call them in our composable function, a custom, because as I said, we can call composable functions only from other composable functions. So in this, want us to use this. So when we write text, so we have two brackets, and one of the things I want us to hover over this. One of the things we can define is the text of this composable. So you see there is an error. So whenever you see a red and error line, it means that there is something wrong with that composable. So in this case, what is wrong is that there is nothing in the text. So, and it is showing there is two cursors. There is one cursor that is blinking, and there is where you should complete. So you should now come here and text. If you have worked with strings, you know that strings must be included in quotes. So we can come and write our first text. Now I want you to watch what is happening. Rendering preview here at the bottom, rendering preview 1 of 1. So, and here you can see it's loading. So the preview is updating, then it's loading. So what is happening is that Compose is building. Every change we make, it's building. So once it builds, it must generate those binaries for us, then it will render our screen. So that's how easy Compose is. You can define whatever you want, and the small changes you make, you do incrementally, they make up your screen content. So now this text, another thing we want us to see what else we can define in this text. So I like placing them like this so that I can define more. So if I come here, I can define a modifier, I can define a color, I can define a font size, and I can define a font style, a font weight, letter spacing, alignment, overflow, max lines, min lines. So let's first define a color. Let's come now, that because this is a function, on itself, it's a composable function, and parameters, we pass parameters function with commas, so we separate them with commas. So then we can call whatever. So if you are not sure of those parameters, you can just hover and see colors. Then you come, after hovering, you come and write color is equals to color dot green. So now these are already defined colors. So in our future videos, I'll be doing a video specifically on customizing colors. As you can see in my project, there's a theme. On this side there's a theme, and there's the colors. So as I said, everything is declarative, so we can define the colors. Whatever we want is defined. So I'll be doing a video specific on that, but for now let's focus on our first compose screen. Now you might ask that why is it that there's nothing that I've set up for compose. I just created this project. So compose is a default for the latest Android Studio version. Is integrated to Android Studio by default. So however, there are some configuration that we can do for compose, so in the Gradle file. So for now, let's now continue editing this, and something else we can modify is this font size. So if we hover again, see we have font size. So the order doesn't matter, but it's always good to follow them in the order they follow. Now it's not a must for you to add all the properties. You can just add the ones that you need to modify or to apply changes to your Composable. Now I want us to use the font size, and now I want us to now call, just as we used to do in XML. If you have interacted in XML, then you know that we define the sizes of text using SPs. So SPs are the recommended unit for defining the size of a text. Okay, so the way we define a text is that we start by a digit, let's say 40, then we put a dot, then the class of that we want. So we want a SP class. Then when you come here, you'll see that it has an error, and it's because I haven't imported this. So as you can see here, there's no import for the SP extension. These are like the way we import classes and import function. So if we just hover over the mouse, you can come and say import extension property int.sp. So once we have added it as this imports, so import Android X compose UI unit.sp. Now as you can see, our text size has changed. Now from that, now we have been able to define 3 properties for this text. Now I want us to do something else so that we can see the effect of this column. So if I copy this the way it is up to here, if I paste this here, it will render. So it start rendering preview 1 of 1, and it will start loading. So it's compiling the changes we have made. So I want us to change this and have this as our second text. Let me minimize this. You see, it's arranged in a vertical order. So whatever I put, if I add another one, it will be arranged in that order. So this is our third text. So we can come and change our properties as much as we want. Color dot black, color dot green. So we call classes or properties with dot, just as we do in Kotlin and in Java if you are used to Java. So this is basically Kotlin, and it's a neat language. It's the recommended language for Android app development. So yeah, it's quite good. Now you see we can define a color of blue. So as I said, these are functions, and to do a recap is that if you can arrange them the way you want, but there is nothing that will prevent you to arrange it this way, but this way it might be a bit challenging for you to make changes. You don't want to affect the near properties. So assume you have a huge project and you are working on it. It's easier to come and just like come and write like this and do your changes, as opposed to just come. You can mess. It's easy to mess when it's like this, so you can always arrange your code like this, as long as you know that these are parameters. Now, as you can see something here, we can note a difference between a text and a column. As I said, we have elements that help build the layouts. So if they help build the layouts, they can accommodate content in them. So, but for text, we don't. A text is a text. So where we define our text is inside the property. So we can't come and do something like this. So to define our text, we simply just come and add the property of the text where we need. Now for each change you make, as I said, compose renders. That's why the small change that I've made, it has affected the screen content, so it's rendering. So the render speed will depend on the speed of your machine. And so guys, that's it for compose and composable functions. So here, as you can see, we have the screen, which is a composable function, and we have the preview, which helps us render whatever is inside here. And as I've covered, there are composables that help us define layouts and others that help us define elements within those layouts, like text fields. These are other things that I'll be covering in my future videos. So that was it, guys. Thank you for watching. If you found this video informative, like this to have more people reach this video. Subscribe, like, and share. Thank you, guys. Thank you for getting composable.